When a wolf girl is rejected by her destined mate, her life takes a dramatic turn. The anger and despair intertwine. Will she choose revenge or a fresh start? Chapter 53. Happily Ever After TCH. 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 Today is Her Highness's coronation. It is not nice of you to wail and scream near the garden. A small witch scolded Brianna as she approached from the other ground on her broom. Diane was startled by the familiar appearance of the witch. While looking up, making Brianna also look up, showing her still shaken, angry face, the bubbly witch murmured, as if to inquire what Diane's problem was. "You're the witch that predicted my daughter's future." Diane realized she would never forget the witch who told her the future. Her appearance was too unusual to be forgotten. "Am I?" Clarissa asked, tilting her head. She did not remember the woman's face, but the question cleared for her the doubt of who the woman in front of her was. She had only ever predicted the future for Celia's sister, so the duet from the tragedy play in front of her must be her family. Brianna inquired, looking at her mother, the information surprising her, making her forget for a moment what she had gone through. As her fury was redirected towards the witch, "You are the reason for everything. You predicted my life would be beautiful and accomplished as a Luna," she once again screamed, as her mother nodded her head, affirming that Clarissa was indeed that witch. And Clarissa asked, unaffected by the werewolf's anger, "You are a liar, a fake." Brianna shouted, blaming her for her misfortune. "I am not. Earlier an alpha came towards you. He was your mate. If he had accepted you, you would have had a beautiful life. How did I lie?" Clarissa spoke like it was the most natural thing in the world. She had indeed predicted the future to Brianna, to try to refrain Celia from having another life, other than her fated one. But in the end all the choices had been left to the women on the ground. She had not forced their hand to do the things they did in the past, because even if Brianna had not created these problems, and had waited for her rightful mate, she would have thought of something else to prevent Celia from becoming Rayanne's Luna. She would have never obligated Brianna to intervene, if the latter was an innocent werewolf or not. "Your mother asked me about your fate, and I told her you would have an alpha mate as your partner, but I never specified who that was. I only told her the truth. You were the one who decided her own path," Clarissa said, and sighing she continued, as Brianna and were lost for words. "Do you know, usually when a witch knows a person's future, if she is close to that person, she would never tell her about it, because whenever someone knows their future, they are likely to get influenced by it and perhaps even alter it. They could make it better or worse, so a witch would never ever tell the future for their closest ones. That should be the case for your parents also. Even if I gave them your divination, they should have not informed you of it. And anyway, even if I did tell them, it was still your own choice in the end," Clarissa said, and did not wait for their reaction or response, quickly moving the broom in the direction of the ballroom, as a familiar bubblegum smell hit her nose, barely collecting themselves from the ground. The mother and daughter did not speak more. What would be the point? Even if Brianna wanted to argue with Di of her ill-fated life, what would she gain from it? It seemed that her sister and she had the same life in the end. They were both rejected by their rightful mates. The sound of 3 cars which stopped at the entrance of the massive ballroom made her snap out of her thoughts, realizing that she was still in a location where she was not permitted to mope on her problems. What if someone saw her and laughed at her? She already did not have good connections with the other Lunas. The others had not stood her presence since the ball 5 years ago, when she demanded a date from His Highness. Her haughtiness was not accepted by them. Coupled with her arrogance, she did not have a single Luna friend. "Is that Her Highness?" Diane exclaimed, holding the arm of Brianna, which made the latter look towards the cars. With frightening heavy auras, 9 men descended from the cars. Dressed in formal black clothing, the alpha-ranked werewolves looked like a beautiful yet fearsome painting. Immediately after they descended, one of the alphas opened the back door of the middle car, and from inside the car, a small slender hand appeared. Slightly bowed, the werewolf held the hand, helping the beautiful dressed woman to alight the car. Brianna and her mother could not see the woman's face, as the latter had a veil on top of her head, plus they were also at a considerable distance away. But it was surely the queen, because as soon as she stepped with both of her feet on the ground, the other 8 men also bowed their heads, and only raised them when the woman waved her hand for them to rise. And with the same bowed posture, some dozen maids were waiting in front to receive the person, raising their heads as well when she waved her hand. Afterwards, in unorderly fashion, the men walked in front of the woman, and 4 men behind her, as the man who helped her alight the car was still holding her hand, guiding her towards the stairs, with the maids behind them. It was indeed a long procession of people. It was only a minute or two since the woman appeared until she disappeared behind the open doors, walking through the hallways, but it was enough for both Brianna and her mother to remain in awe. The queen exuded nothing but royalty. Indeed, the king had hidden her to shield her from the outside world. Snapping out of their thoughts, they hurried towards the back door that led to the garden, walking back to the ballroom to wait for the ceremony to start. They could not afford to miss it and disrespect the 2 royals. They did not realize that from one of the cars Daniel had also alighted, as they had been too entranced by the sight of the queen to better observe her surroundings, helping the queen towards the waiting room for her to meet up with Solos, who had come ahead of her to check for himself the preparations. The Watcher pack finished their duty, so Jake smiling let go of Celia's hand, which Solos gladly took. Afterwards the men bowed their heads and retreated from the waiting room to also take their seats inside the ballroom. "Hey there, cocky wolf," a voice called from behind, just as Jake was about to enter the ballroom with the others. "Hey there, annoying little teenager witch," Jake sighed, replying to Clarissa's greeting. You, how can you call your mate that? And also, you know I dislike it when you mention my age," she retorted, immediately upset, with her cheeks pouting. "Yeah. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." "Little witch. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." "Don't be upset," Jake coaxed her, gently petting her head. He quite liked to infuriate the witch, as his mate looked the most beautiful when she puffed her round cheeks. "How much longer will you call me little?" Clarissa said, upset, before pouncing in Jake's arms and placing a kiss on his lips. Her actions made him flinch, as Clarissa quickly jumped down and, running a hand through her curly hair to remove the strands from her face, walked towards the ballroom, not waiting for him. "Dude, you've got your hands full with the little one," Marcus stated, as the men had all along been near Jake, watching the interaction, with the rest of the men whistling in agreement. "Shut it," Jake ordered, embarrassed as a tinge of red appeared on his ears. Then, after placing his hand on his mouth to cover a small cough, hurriedly went inside the ballroom to follow after Clarissa. Inside the ballroom, all the people took their seats, as the maids had announced that soon the king and queen would be in attendance. They all settled down, but small murmurs could be heard throughout the gigantic ballroom, massive enough to hold inside of it thousands of people. They were all excited to finally meet the queen, for whom they had waited for the longest of time. "You finally showed up. You really are a good for nothing, embarrassing me always. Take your seat already. Her Highness will come soon," Ray Aunt said, displeased, as Brianna quickly sat on her chair. She did not retort his words, as they were a common occurrence, and only looked towards the door the king and queen were supposed to enter from. Diane also took her seat near Brianna and her husband, with whom she also did not have a good relationship these days. The man had been influenced by his wife, and now their entire life was messed up, so frustrated kept blaming Diane for everything. Enthusiasm In the past, he had a good relationship with Rayanne's father, but now with Rayanne, the current alpha, things could not be worse. He was also about to hand his beta position to another, and it would not be to his son, as he had dreamt he would. Daniel had left home and followed his dream, even without their agreement. All rise and bow. Their highnesses are now in attendance. The two doormen shouted, making all the sounds in the room quiet down. Waiting for everyone to rise, the doormen stood still, and after a few moments each one approached his side of the doors, and concomitantly opened them. "Are you ready, my love?" Solos asked, Celia kissing her hand. As the door were opening, she inhaled a deep breath and nodded. By now the veil was no longer covering her face, as she was about to be officially introduced, and her identity did not need to be hidden anymore. Smiling gently at her, Solos slowly guided her through the doors and then towards the two thrones that were placed at the very front of the ballroom. He helped the petite woman sit, then also sat himself down, the both of them putting their hands on the armrests. "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." As Solos always preferred to hold her hand, the two thrones had been crafted in such a manner that the middle armrest was the same for the two thrones, so they would have no room to place their hands side by side. As such, he gladly covered his small hand with his big one, gingerly holding it, to assure and calm her emotions, with the both of them finally seated comfortably. Only then did Solos let the people inside the massive room raise their heads. "You may rise." Solos's voice powerfully boomed inside the ballroom, before anyone dared to look up towards the front. Small gasps could be heard all around, as the multitude of werewolves finally saw the hidden queen of the werewolf race, with a beautiful grey dress that shimmered with tints of golden light, with a small beautiful face that exuded an elegant nobility no lesser than Solos's, coupled with the small diamond tiara. The queen was a sight to be seen. She was indeed a perfect match for the man on her left side. Midst the werewolves, there was also for werewolves that were shocked, but not for the same reasons as the others were. The appearance of Celia, on the other far end of the room, seated elegantly on the throne, was a sight that they never would have expected. Their minds kept spiraling in thoughts, but tried as they may they could not comprehend where she was seated on the throne, where the queen should sit. "Thou to your new queen of the werewolf race, Celia Wolf," Solos said using his alpha voice. After the werewolves only caught a glance of her, it was in a sense a means to prove her supremacy over them. It was not part of the custom, as the queens from the past had not held the king's rank and thus could not override his command. But Celia had the same rank. She could do so. The werewolves were confused because of this. The custom was for the king to order them to bow again, and for the queen to tell them they could rise. In this way, she would also receive their obedience. But by using his alpha voice, what was the king trying to do? She could never make them rise now. "You may rise." Celia's voice was heard inside the ballroom, although she also used her alpha voice. Her tone was mellower than the king's. The werewolves immediately rose at her command, creating another wave of gasps inside the ballroom. For the queen to override the king's order, she would have to be the same rank. The first rank. "You can take a seat now. Please be at ease, we are between family," Solos ordered, as they all took their seats. With robotic movements, the werewolves at the table for Celia's old pack also took their seats. Diane was too emotional to say anything, or think anything more, as her husband was also. Celia already had a mate, but now she appeared as the mate of the king, and she also held the same rank as him. The both of them could not comprehend what happened. How did she come to be the king's mate? Rayanne was at a loss for words, but tried to not think more of what happened, firmly closing his eyes. There was nothing he could do. The night of the ball all those years ago, he had never told anyone how the king confronted him then. But now, seeing Celia as the queen, he could understand why the king was so possessive of her. How it came to be he did not know, but at this point it was useless to think about it. the only one who was still not resigned. Digging her fingernails in her palms to the point that blood would seep through her hands was Brianna. Why did always Celia got to have the best? Everything she did from childhood until now was the best, no matter how she tried to step in front of her sister, even stealing her mate, and Celia was still the winner. Why, just why? Time quickly passed, as the alphas of the most important packs offered their allegiance, in front of the new queen one by one, an allegiance that Rayanne's pack and other lesser packs would not have the privilege to give. There were too many packs, so from long ago only the 100 most important packs would come and be presented to the queen. The rest could only stare at her from afar, as they were not allowed to exchange even a small word with her. Finishing the loyalty oaths, Solas spoke again for all. You have met your queen, and in the future you will see her again. Unfortunately, now she will retire for the rest of the evening and will not participate at the following dinner. My mate is currently carrying the heir to the throne, so please be understanding. I hope you have a pleasant evening. A lot of delicious food has been prepared. Solas asked of the werewolves, or better said informed them, and had already risen on his feet, taking Celia's hand in his own, after once again shocking the people in the room. Celia's mother and father also quickly rose on their feet, and ran between the tables to get to their daughter. At this time, Brianna still did not utter a word. What could she possibly do now, other than live the life she had mistakenly chosen for herself? This would be her punishment for desiring what was never supposed to be hers. Some might say, this was a small retribution for her actions. But living a life near a person who did not love you, surrounded by people who only flattered you for the mask you would put on each day, having fames that no longer brought you joy, carrying on each moment in this way and seeing the person you had scorned at, having the life you could only dream of, were this not already heavy punishments? Finally reaching near the front of the ballroom, as Celia and Solas were already about to exit through the door, the two parents were blocked before getting close to them by the men who had escorted Celia inside the ballroom. Her pack. By now the men knew just how her parents had treated her like. Daniel had told them all about it, as he became friends with them, so they would never let her parents near her. Especially Marcus, who had regretted having informed them of her location when her parents came to the academy looking for Celia. Move out of the way. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Honey, the mother called, trying to catch a glimpse of her daughter, with tears in her eyes. This time, true tears were flowing, as Diane had realized just how much she had wronged Celia. She had always felt that Brianna was like a real Luna. She had always thought she was perfect, but seeing Celia on the throne just now, she did not look out of place at all. The girl who she had hoped would at least find a beta to be married off to, the daughter she never expected to be anything special, was in fact the perfect queen for an entire race. But this was not what was the most important now. She had only wanted to talk to Celia, missing her daughter and realizing just how much the oldest child always did for all of them. Members of lesser packs do not have the right to address Her Highness directly. Please go back to your seat, or you will suffer the consequences. Jake firmly informed. She is my daughter. I just want to see her. I just want to talk to her, Diane said, with her husband agreeing. I am sorry. Her Highness is the queen of the werewolf race. You can only speak to her if Her Highness wishes to speak with you first. Jake once again denied, without a hint of feeling sorry for them. Diane finally broke down crying. Why would Celia ever speak to them first? When all her life they had done her wrong, she would never do so. They would never have the opportunity to right their wrongs. This was their punishment, never taking part in any way in the life of the daughter who had always loved them. The one who had never disobeyed them would be the one they would never reach again. Outside the hall, Celia and Solas heard her parents' voices, but neither stopped to turn around. By this point, Celia would never believe the cries were sincere. They never were in the past. Why would they be now? Do you want to return? Solas asked gently. He knew she would not, but still asked the petite woman, letting her decide. My close family is only you and our child, she said with the same gentleness. He smiled at the woman, placing a loving kiss on her lips, before resuming their steps. That was right. Their family consisted of only the three of them. The end extra. An every day's diary entry, call me your highness. The tall handsome man emanated from the beautiful woman. He kept firmly in his embrace, kept with a force not enough to hurt her, just sufficient to keep her in place. The woman was reluctant to look at the man. He had a way with making her do what he wished each time she looked in those blue eyes of his. So now she was stubbornly looking away. Come on, call me your highness, he said again, this time with a lower pleading voice. I will. Your name is Solas, so I will refer to you as such. Let go already. The children could come at any moment. The beautiful fairy-like woman said, unwilling to let him have his way. So what if they come? I am only hugging you gingerly. I missed you so much. Having been away from you for such a long time. Haven't you missed me as well? Solas said with a hoarser voice. A sad expression could clearly be seen in the handsome man's appearance. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilbe, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilbe, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Hug me as you would like. Celia finally gave up, and leaned in his embrace, delighting Solas, as he held her even closer. Good. Thank you very much. But aren't you going to call me your highness? Solas asked again, clearly getting over her bottom line. I am not in the mood for jokes. I will call you Solas. And that's final, she said harshly, but did not move away. Really, this man, just because he remembered and was nostalgic about the past. He kept asking her to call him like she did in the period before she knew they were mates. But she would not relent in the slightest. She knew exactly his thoughts. He had done it so many times already. He would start talking about the past, then tell her to call him your highness, then he would start acting like he was her king, commanding her to kiss him, to hug him too. Aren't you at least going to say you missed me? Solas tried his luck again. You shameless man. You were only away for an hour. I didn't even manage to get any work done, and you returned. How could I miss you after such a short time? Raising her head to look at him. It was a miracle how she managed to get her work as the queen done with him always around her, demanding attention. He was clingier than even the children, and it was even more of a surprise how he managed to swiftly finish all of his obligation, when he was following her closely every day. Well, shameless man. That's also good. I will show you just how shameless I am, he said with a smirk, then quickly rose on his feet going after the woman, who had just realized she still stepped on a landmine by calling him a shameless man, and had quickly moved away. Stop, I still have work to do, Celia said hurriedly, already placing her arms in the front as if to keep him away. A shameless man does not care about. Solas started to say, chuckling, trying to find a weak spot in her defense. But after all these years it was not so easy. Mom, the beautiful 6-year-old called. The cute blue-eyed girl was a carbon copy of Solas, and even her unbothered expression was much like his. She could clearly see her mother was slowly backed towards a corner of the room, with her father steadily moving towards her, but did not care at all. It was an everyday occurrence. Yes, honey, Celia immediately replied, glad to see her savior. We can't find Gabriel, and it's already time for our classes, the small girl said, with her curly pigtails moving from side to side. Let's go find him together, Celia gladly offered, trying to escape the man. He is hiding in the garden, Solas informed the girl, before Celia took even one step forward. Why would he hide? Celia asked, confused, already letting down her guard. Who knows? He replied calmly, concealing the truth. How could he tell her? He was hiding from the children. Celia saw hurt-win girls as angels, and was incapable of thinking there were some who were scared of the 6-year-old. Now then, Where were we? He resumed his chasing, finally capturing in his arms the beauty. Is he in the garden again? Asked another beautiful 6-year-old girl, who was almost identical to the first girl, with the difference being that she had chocolate-colored eyes, as her sister exited their parents' office. Yet the first girl replied, already moving through the hallway, skipping away. See, I told you he was there, said the second girl, as she skipped along with her sister. I knew that already, the first girl said calmly, with her pigtails bouncing around. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. The second girl asked, curious, as her head moved to the side to look at her sister's face. I thought to save Mum, but never mind, the first girl said, like it was an obvious thing. Oh, the second girl affirmed, though she did not understand at all why her mother needed saving. She did not ask more questions, looking at her gullible sister. The blue-eyed beauty sighed. Her twin sister not only looked like their mom, she was also a bit naughty as her. She had to look after her properly in the future. Finally arriving in front of the indoor garden, the two girls opened the double door and went inside. Looking at the two of them side by side, they made quite a cute appearance dressed in pink identical dresses, with their curly pigtails. They really did look like Celia thought. A pair of small angels. They only lacked the wings on their backs. Gabriel, the two shouted in unison. But no one replied. Gabriel, we know you are here. We can smell your fear. The blue-eyed beauty giggled, as she gingerly talked. I am not afraid. You can't smell any fear, the man said, clearly getting up from behind a bush. He had sadly realized he truly could not escape the two demons, as he preferred calling them. Right. Then let's play, the blue-eyed girl immediately said, jumping around. We can't, Your Highness. You have classes now, Gabriel said, trying to appear like a true teacher. It was his job to manage the lessons of the two girls. He had tried whistling his way out, but sadly he could not. If you knew that, you shouldn't have started playing hide-and-seek with us, the small chocolate-eyed girl said, smiling. Your Highness, please let's go first and have the classes, and then we will play. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Gabriel asked slowly, still trying to appear friendly. Nope. Let's play first. Last time you also said that. And during the last few minutes of the class, you ran away. You lied and said you were going to the bathroom. But you didn't come back, the blue-eyed beauty affirmed, showing an aggrieved face. Well, you see, last time there was an emergency, but this time I will stay and play for real. He quickly reasoned. He was afraid that if he prolonged the conversation with the two small demo, he meant angels, they would no play with us. The two girls commanded with their alpha voice, a voice the sec and ranked werewolf had no choice but to listen. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. He involuntarily said, even though he was clearly unwilling. Now then, let's play horse. We are the riders. You are the horse, the blue-eyed girl said, smiling. Your Highness, I am not as young as I was once. Let's play something. Gabriel tried to change the mind of the twin demo. He meant angels. No, Grandpa Emery's older, and he lets us play horse. You should play with us too. Gabriel looked helpless at the two. He could not deny it anymore. That old man lowered himself too much to the girls' level. He was practically the one who had transformed the two angels into fallen ones. The councilman would even get upset if somebody called him Victor nowadays, since the twins said they like calling him Emery, that double-standard old man. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. The werewolf queen's shameless lesson Solas. I wanted to speak to you about. Celia started to say, just as she opened the palace's office door. In the past, the private office of the werewolf king located in the living quarters of the palace was usually pretty much unused, as the busy man was mostly always on the move between the council office, the academy, and his public business life. Nowadays, with the discovery of his mate, the current werewolf queen and leader of the Lycans, in this particular office the royal couple spent most of their days, ensuring that even though they dealt with different matters, they could still spend time together. Everything that did not need their physical presence in particular was resolved from this office. Only if they could not help it would they visit other places that needed them to attend in person. They were so much in this office that it was as though they were recuperating the lost time that this office had been left unused in the past. And more importantly, using the werewolf king's own words, making up for the time he had been deprived of his rightful mate. 100 years to be more exact. Likewise were also the king's words. But right at this very moment, the man, who seemed as though he would die if his queen was not by his side at all times, was nowhere to be seen. Even the smell of lavender, and with that Celia adored, could be felt only faintly in the air. By the look of it, the werewolf king, or better said her husband, had not been in this office for this entire day already. This was really odd, Celia thought as she looked from left to right. Solas would never change his location without informing her. Even when she was away with her own pack, he would always call her in the morning telling her of his schedule for the day, or if he did not say where he would be, then it meant he would follow his usual program, and his usual schedule would involve this office as place of where he would be working at. This never changed. It absolutely never happened in the 12 years they had been together. Not even once. So for Celia, who usually knew where Solas was even though she had never paid attention to his schedule, or asked to know it for that matter, this particular situation unknowingly irked a tiny little bit a small corner of her heart. She felt even more upset, approaching Solas's desk and finding a small note on top of it. The man had not left her information about his whereabouts. No, the note was only a tantrum. For lack of better words, I have business to do outside of the palace today. I will return when I finish it. As for when that will be, there is no need to inform you of it. You are not interested in knowing it after all. Peeling off the note from the mahogany surface, she approached it more to her face to read it again. Even though her werewolf vision could distinctly see the smallest particles left on the note by the pen Solas had used, even without needing to bring the piece of paper closer to her eyes, for some reason she really could not believe the words inscribed on it. He did not mention where he went. He did not inform her he would still let her know when he would return after finding out how long he needed to be gone for. And most importantly, he had even said there was no need for her to know, because after all she did not care. If this was not a tantrum, then she really did not know what a better example for a tantrum would be. Even their girls, who were already 7 years old, did not act like how Solas was acting at this very moment. Well, frankly, if she were to think about it, this tantrum had somewhat begun about a week ago. Although he would still work with her in the office, although he would never fall asleep without her being on the same bed, Solas was no longer hugging her as he slept, and even the words they exchanged in the office had begun to dwindle more and more. What started this cold mood of Solas? She really did not know, but it was clear that the situation was beginning to aggravate. Perhaps now it was only a tantrum, but she could not foresee if Solas's mood would continue to worsen. What if it got to a point when he would not love her anymore? Celia's heart thumped loudly at the thought, and even Waning was feeling restless inside her mind. As mates, the attraction they felt to one another would never wane, but this would only be an almost animalistic instinct. It would only be a physiological need of their bodies, not their own will. She had fallen in love with Solas even before they had known they were mates. For her what mattered most were their feelings to one another. If Solas was beginning to fall out of love with her, what should she do then? Gabriel and Maria's home a few hours later, my queen. What may I help you with? Gabriel inquired, curious of the visit. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. And Celia had become the best of friends, but Maria would usually be the one who would visit Celia at the palace. It was rare for the Queen to visit their home, and almost impossible for him to be the one sought out, instead of his wife. Sighing deeply, with her head slightly tilted downwards, Celia's general atmosphere felt as though the problem she was facing at this very moment was capable of affecting the entire werewolf world. Even her posture, as she was sitting on the couch with one of her feet crossed over the other, felt formal and strained. Gabriel pondered. Even before Celia opened her mouth, why was he feeling a sense of déjà vu just now? Gabriel, listen well to what I am about to tell you, and think carefully before you answer. The fate of the royal family depends on your answers. Celia finally opened her mouth and said, her sharp eyes making Gabriel convinced of the seriousness of the matter. Despite this, and despite the concentration she showed towards the words she spoke, Gabriel's mind still wandered a bit about. He really did feel a sense of déjà vu. It was like this situation had already happened at one point in the past. But this should be impossible. Celia had never visited their house before after all. My queen, please say, whatever it is, I will do my best to follow your orders, he solemnly replied, trying to put at the back of his mind his earlier thoughts. He could not afford to think about unimportant things. When Celia had personally visited him, it was clear. It was a matter of utmost importance. I need to know, she started to say, encouraged by Gabriel's words, but still felt reluctant to speak about it. Yes, please feel free to say, Gabriel again affirmed, feeling more unsettled as time passed. Unlike his friend, who had visited his house in the past for a dumb reason, Celia's matter would certainly be urgent and dangerous, and he thought again confused. The déjà vu feeling he had felt. Was it because of Solaz's previous visit? Like when he had come to teach him how to court Celia, and he had told Solaz he would teach him how to be shameless. Yes, right. Gabriel thought again. This situation was similar to that time, he realized. But why was the voice inside of his mind a woman's voice? Maria expressed shocked, just as she entered with a tray on which 3 cups of coffee were placed. Well, better said, had been placed, as the cups were already on the floor at this moment. Are you all right? Gabriel quickly turned his eyes towards his mate, concerned for the reason which had made her drop the tray suddenly from her hands. Yes, I am. Your Highness. What did you say? Maria asked again, not paying much attention to Gabriel, who was already by her side, checking on her feet. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Teach me how to be shameless. She repeated the words Gabriel had not properly registered in his mind a second ago, and then put both her hands on her face, as she was unable to watch their reaction to her request. Growing up with a family that rarely if ever showed love towards her, Celia had always been quite cold in expressing her love as well. She was never cuddled, never protected. Never did her mother, father or siblings expressed such warmth towards her. Her brother, who she was still keeping in contact even now, had lived in the same environment as her. So even though they were quite close as siblings, he also did not know how to show his feelings to another person. Just like her, they called each other, inquired about each other's well-being. He also visited the palace and the twins from time to time. But this was about it. As for her two little angels, for some reason the two felt more mature than their actual age. They acted like they were already adults, so they also did not cuddle too much with her. The only one who would. It was Solaz, but he would be the one to do it. She mostly never initiated an act of embracing him, almost never took the initiative to kiss him herself on her own. But the man was already doing this every chance he had. When would she ever need to do it herself? And also, she had already taken it for granted that the situation was like this. She had already taken for granted his feelings for her. Sure, she loved him more than life itself. But when it came to whisper words of love, to be more forward in showing her love towards him, she was very much lacking in this aspect. So her only option right now was to rely on the ones who had helped Solas before. By chance she had found out who the advisor of Solas's many shameless acts was, a fact which had left her speechless. A professor she had respected, a teacher she looked up to. For him to be capable of such shrewdness, it was beyond her. She couldn't believe it at first, but considering that the person she had admired even more than Gabriel, the werewolf king, actually acted like how he did, perhaps she shouldn't be surprised about his closest friend either. Birds of a feather flock together after all. So after she had gotten over her initial shock at the time, she had wanted to come and directly get explanations from Gabriel, and perhaps to also deal with him in some way, but she was too embarrassed to get the situation out in the open after all. How could she come to his house and ask the man if he was the one who had made Solas take advantage of the fact that she had stolen his first kiss? This was too flustering to talk about. In the end there was nothing she could do but turn a blind eye to the matter. She could only pretend she did not know anything about it all her life. Needless to say, the last thing she ever expected to do was to come on her own accord to seek out Gabriel and Maria, especially since she had thought that Gabriel's adversaries were nothing but nonsense. But though she had thought like this, the things he had taught Solas did bring them closer. If it worked once, it was bound to work again, she hoped. "Why, Your Highness?" Maria uttered confused. She was so flustered that she had even used Celia's official title. Though she would use the Queen's name in private normally, Celia had asked her to do so. "Your Highness, to live to witness the day when you would come to me for advices." Gabriel spoke emotional, his voice sounding a bit broken as he was barely holding in his enthusiasm. An enthusiasm both Celia and Maria did not share at all. Celia was actually already regretting her choice as he was speaking. "I could not be more proud of my accomplishments being recognized, but..." He continued speaking, not paying attention to Maria, who was already shaking her head from side to side in hopelessness, or Celia, who was baffled by his audacity. Gabriel was not even fearful she would do something to him now that she was aware of Solas's secret lessons. "If I was to teach you anything, my life would be finished in the next second. Solas would kill me if I put any ideas inside your head. I am after all a man. He would not take it lightly for me to speak to you about these things." Though he was proud that his adversaries were recognized, even by the imperial couple, he still valued his life. Solas would most likely be happy with what she would do as a result of the lessons. But afterwards he would come and have his throat, because Gabriel, a man, had talked with his wife about such private matters. And anyway, for these kind of adversaries, my mate is a better option. She is my apprentice and the first to bear witness to the effectiveness of my methods. She would surely guide you on the right path. May you both have a fruitful discussion, finishing speaking as quickly as he could, especially the last part. So neither could refute his words nor decline his solution. Gabriel made use of his werewolf abilities in the best way he could. And this was clean as swiftly as possible. Though he really was curious why Celia felt the need to get adversaries from him. That man was already crazy about her to the point he was practically glued to her. What could have triggered the werewolf queen to seek him? Well, he would find out from Maria later. His mate would most likely tell him what had made Celia come to their house. With the speed of a second-ranked werewolf, Gabriel was out of the door before Maria could contradict him, or even open her mouth for that matter. Sighing a bit, as she thought to postpone the killing of Gabriel until the latter would return home, Maria approached the couch and took a seat near Celia. She had even forgotten about the broken cups that she had dropped in the awkwardness of the matter. But who could blame her? An irresponsible mate who declined any responsibility for his actions, and even pushed her in front of Celia to talk to her about his so-called shameless lessons, effectively forcing her to talk again about how she was courted by her mate. These were enough reasons to explain her erratic frame of mind. It also wasn't helping that Celia was about to cry. At least this was how Maria sensed Celia's mood. The usually expressionless pale face was now even paler, with only moist red eyes and a crimson nose being the evidence of her human lively state. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. What exactly happened? Maria asked thoughtful. Solis, he doesn't love me anymore, she replied slowly, saying the bitter truth with her own mouth. Brought her even more pain than she had thought. Her heart kept tightening in sorrow. That can't be true. His Highness dearly loves you. Maria reasoned quickly, the swiftness of her answer partially because Celia's tears began to slowly fall from her eyes, but also because she was absolutely sure of her reply. The werewolf king was so infatuated with Celia to the point of obsession. Such a man changing his feelings in a short time was truly unthinkable. Just a month ago, he had decorated the whole palace with a multitude of roses in celebration of his mate's birthday. It is true. For this whole week he has ignored me. When we sleep he no longer hugs me. When in the past he would almost smother me to death and still would not move away for a second. He wouldn't even eat, if I was not beside him. But he ate separately without a bother this week whether I was home or not. And today he even left a note, saying he didn't need to tell me where he would be going or when he would be returning, because there was no need for me to know. Maria's first reaction would have normally been to dismiss Celia's worries and attribute Solis's recent actions to only a tantrum, but Celia's hoarse voice prevented her from doing so. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Oddly enough, Celia's reasons made sense. In any other situation, and if it was any other man, these matters would have been explainable. But Solis would never leave Celia room to breathe for even a day. A week had already passed and he was still cold to her. She wouldn't think something as drastic as Celia was thinking, because Solis would never not love his mate. He had waited faithfully for her for 100 years already. You have to help me. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. What can I do to make him love me again? Celia pleaded as she took hold of Maria's hands. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. It's impossible for His Highness to fall out of love with you. In my opinion, His Highness might be. Several hours later, the royal palace. Sighing a bit with an obvious frown decorating his handsome visage, Solis slowly walked inside the hallway. He was so concentrated on his inner turmoil that he did not even notice the strange quietness of the palace until he had almost reached his and Celia's room. Only at this moment, he realized that he could not sense even one single maid in the private quarters. After 8 p.m., indeed all the maids would retire for the night, but it was only 5 p.m. right now, for not one single maid to be present. It was weird. As for the twins, they had started spending more and more time with Clarissa, their cousin Hope or Emery these days, so he did not feel worried about them, not to mention that the 2 7-year-old brats would be the ones who others feared because of their first rank, rather than the ones that needed protection. Reaching the door of his room, with his mind slightly distracted by these thoughts, he sighed again, sensing the strawberry smell he loved so much seeping out from the minor gaps that existed between the door and its frame. It seemed that his heartless mate was already inside their room. The beautiful, but mean woman had probably not even cared about his absence from the royal palace today. He loved her so much that he could hardly breathe if he was away from her for too long. But she was probably still fine without him. Had she even noticed his slight alienation from her this week? He pondered, hopeless. Probably not. He admitted to himself defeated. At the beginning of the week, he had been too busy and caught in difficult matters at the council's office, causing him to come later than usual for the dinner with his mate. He was worried when he arrived home that Celia had probably starved waiting for him to come. But not only was she all right with his absence from the table, she had even eaten unbothered without him. On one side, he felt thankful that his petite wife was fed and well taken care of, but on the other side, he felt bitter that she was all right enough to eat without him. It was quite a complicated feeling. It was a feeling he pondered about a lot, and it made him feel more and more conflicted and unsure of the extent of her feelings for him. Was it only the mate bond for her? Did she really love him? That night he decided to test how much she really loved him. Even though he felt his heart ache so much not holding her close to his chest, he abstained and did not hug her to sleep. But she did not react at all. Then one thing led to another, and it had already been a week that he had tried to get a reaction out of her. He wanted the slightest indication that she was bothered by the alienation between them, but there was not even a small tiny proof of her displeasure. Clenching his jaws at these thoughts, he put his hand on the handle and slowly opened the door. No matter what, he would never really see her from his side. In the end he would love her enough for the both of them. He could not live without her after all. He could only go back to how he was before, because he really could not stand another night without having her close in his arms. He loved her way too much to continue being away from her, even if she did not love him anymore. "Where were you?" a demanding voice asked. It was a bit higher pitched than usual, but he could still recognize this voice any time. "I had some business outside of the palace today. I just returned," Solas replied with a calm expression as he closed the door behind him. He was already resigned to the situation. Thus did not realize her slight displeasure evident not only because of her inquisitive tone, but also because of the crossed hands in front of her chest. "And you did not bother to tell me about it? Not even a phone call?" She continued talking with the same voice, her tone a bit graver than before. "Should I have called you? Do I have to call you each time?" Solas replied, still calm, but by replying with a question, you could tell he was also irked a bit. It seemed that even though he had told himself to go back to how he was before, he was still bothered his feelings were not reciprocated. "Of course you have to. And it's even Christmas Eve today," she replied again, a bit more annoyed. No matter how clueless she was in reading his intentions, it was clear she had noticed his upset state. "We are werewolves. We don't celebrate Christmas," he finally properly replied, but it only made her sadder. They always made a Christmas tree for the girls and shared gifts. Now he was saying they were werewolves. Weren't they werewolves before too? "Fine. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I guess I will not give you the gift." She sighed and wrapped even tighter her robe around herself. Maria said to use that method, but he did not even want her gift. "Gift? What gift?" Solas's tone subtly changed from a sad state to a curious one. No matter how upset he was, a gift from Celia would always grab his full attention. For some seconds, Celia did not reply to his question. She was trying to gather her courage, but it was taking more than she expected. Was she too upset because of his words just now and did not want to give him the gift? Solas pondered, concerned, and wanted to immediately justify himself and smooth things over, when his beautiful wife separated her hands from her chest, taking with them her satin pink robe too. "Me, I am your gift," she replied with bright red cheeks, as his eyes darted from the top of her head to the sole of her feet. And how could he not check every single corner? Especially since the barely covering Santa mini dress hardly managed to cover the things that he really did not want to see covered at this moment. "I will gladly accept it," he quickly said, and immediately used his werewolf speed to move closer towards the embarrassed over-the-top woman, who seemed to want to cover the inviting costume once again. "You said you aren't celebrating Christmas, so you won't receive it anymore," she said, annoyed, with his arms already on her waist, effectively impeding her from closing her robe again. Solas's expression swiftly changed to the warmest temperature possible. How was this creature so lovable? Her puffed, annoyed cheeks and the scolding tone. He could just eat her up right in this very second. "I am celebrating it. I will celebrate always and forever," he quickly added, and had already roughly lowered himself on the bed above Celia, preventing the latter from escaping his arms. Yushi wanted to scold again, but could not as he hungrily covered her lips, taking a second to let Celia catch her breath. Solas rose his head a bit, wanting to look at her dazed expression. "What's the matter?" he hurriedly asked, seeing the large teardrops that fell on his most precious person's face. He really wasn't expecting her sad expression at this moment. "I thought you did not love me anymore." She sobbed and quickly hugged him desperately. His kiss was proof that he still had feelings for her. Right. She hoped with all her heart, as she tightened her hold on him. No matter what. You're mine. I will never let you leave me. How could you not call me and tell me where you were? How could you fall asleep and not hug me tight? She continued complaining as she increased even more her hold. Solazir's heart felt like it could burst every second now. Not only had she noticed his gestures, but she was also affected by them. She really did love him. Her scolding points only warming up his more with each matter she complained about. Yes, I am all yours. The clingy werewolf king immediately agreed, satisfied as never before that he made the petite woman admit her love. Then he waited no more and finally uncovered the parts that the mini dress hadn't allowed him to see earlier. At the same time, elsewhere, your highnesses. This is the last time. Clarissa sighed as she sat between the two small girls. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. They replied in unison and even nodded their head to express their honesty. But Clarissa knew that it most definitely was not the last time. They had told her so numerous times before. Not to mention that even though they nodded and agreed, they did not even bother to look in her direction, giving up on convincing the girls on why they should not come to this mansion again. She plopped her head on her hands and started to swing her legs just like the two troublemakers were doing. There they are, the small blue-eyed beauty said, as her sister immediately followed her line of sight. They are even cuter than before. But both of them expressed pleased by the sight. Your highnesses, please, speak slower, Clarissa advised quickly. They were in a tree right now, and as it was covered with a lot of snow, the three of them should be quite camouflaged thanks to their white coats and dresses. The branch they had chosen to sit on was also quite high up, but it was better to be safe than sorry. It's all right, even if they notice. The two again spoken in unison. No, it's not. It's not the right time for you to meet them. She tried to convince the mischievous bear, who did not pay attention to her warnings at all. It was quite evident she was not listened to. Otherwise the two girls wouldn't have both dropped a small transparent roses on the ground. Your highnesses, Clarissa concerned voiced. But it was already too late. She hadn't even managed to see with her eyes the position of the roses to start her spell that could retrieve them, when they were picked up from the snowed ground. Two small boys, who were mirror images of each other, looked mesmerized at the roses which magically changed their color as it came in contact with their touch. Kenneth, where are you? A man's hoarse voice called out to them, making them turn their attention from the light blue roses towards the door of the mansion, where a tall somber man was standing. Coming. Both of them replied, hearing their pet names, and trotted towards the entrance of the mansion. Your highnesses, you really shouldn't have. Clarissa started to say, defeated. Why? They are ours. We have to make sure they know it. They both expressed sure of themselves. Honestly, like father, like daughters. The witch thought hopeless.